This is the Real Estate Foundation, your show for massive action with proven results. Raise your life and your legacy with real estate.
Are you ready to take your multifamily game to the next level? Well, you need to join us October 12th, Saturday, October 12th, for our one-day multifamily foundation workshop. We're going to bring it to you live. We got a list of 15 speakers. They're going to go through the process of everything it takes to get your mind right, get the deal right, learn the terms, understand the markets, learn how to find the deals, learn how to underwrite the deals, learn how to put your team together, everything from property managers to brokers to insurance companies. Beyond that, what's the proper way to raise funds for a deal and how to close a deal and what to do after you take over a deal. So it's going to be a huge event. It's going to be awesome for you to join us. Got a great space. It's going to be here in New Jersey, in Springfield, New Jersey. Of course, it's going to be a one-day event, but we got everything packed in from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Right now, if you put in the code workshop, you're going to get a special discount. And again, that code is workshop. You need to go to multifamilyfoundationworkshop.com. Again, www.multifamilyfoundationworkshop.com, and go fast because we've sold a ton of tickets for this. I actually was able to get a bigger room, but that's filling up quickly as well. So again, www.multifamilyfoundationworkshop.com, put in the code workshop. There we go. Got that down. And look forward to seeing you so we can all take massive action together. Well, hello again and welcome to the Real Estate Foundation podcast. Super excited for today's show. We are going to talk multifamily action, which we love to bring you. So today we have Juan Vargas on the show. Hey, Juan, how you doing?
Hey, Jason, man, it's a pleasure to be on the show, man. It's an honor. I've listened to you right before we started recording. I even, told you, man, I first listened to you and learned a little bit more about you on another podcast. This is, maybe a couple years back. And so I love what you were doing, all the advice and all the value that you brought. And, you brought a lot of inspiration, to a lot of people, including myself. So I want to tell you that up front. I do appreciate the opportunity to be on your show as well.
Well, thank you for that. And you're taking massive action. So I'm excited. Juan actually just closed the deal Friday, I believe. So there's been a lot happening in these last few years here. And Juan has been actively engaged in all aspects of real estate sales, investment, management, financing, and construction for more than 10 years. He has acquired residential lots, 4 single-family homes, and multitudes of multifamily properties, as we'll get into later. He has experience with residential as well as commercial, including individually owning and managing a 32-unit multifamily property. And this has allowed him the opportunity to gain firsthand valuable experience in running and operating a property. And his company, GenWealth Capital, has ownership currently in over 1,900 units. So, Juan, this is awesome. And you said off air that 32 unit was a deal that actually was the first one out there. But talk to us about, who is Juan Vargas? Like, where did you start, and what was the draw to multifamily property?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. So yeah, who is Juan Vargas? Just a normal guy, out of Texas. And so, I guess I can start from the very beginning. Very beginning was, my dad was a hard worker. He was a welder. He always worked hard, and he had some rental properties, as well as a child. I had, I was around him, but what he did was he would do everything himself. So he'll find the property, do the rehab, do the maintenance, pretty much doing everything. And I remember him telling me one time when we were younger, he was like, man, when you get older, you need to buy some houses, buy some real estate, buy some houses. And then at that time, I was like, man, I don't want to be underneath a sink, like this is my picture of, houses, is being underneath the sink, and doing these kind of repairs. I just don't want to do that, Fast forward, I still ended up being underneath hoods of cars because I went to go work for BMW, so I did that because I wanted to find something quick, something that wouldn't take, 4 years, a traditional 4-year college. So I decided to do something that was, a year and a half, 2 years at most. And then, you can start making some money, quickly after that. So I went to go work for BMW. I did that for a good while. But during that time, I got married, I had 3 kids. And so I was spending a lot of time at work and not, time with my kids. And that's the same thing that my dad was kind of doing with us. He didn't really spend time with us. It was all about work and business with him, and so, it was more of a, what can I do at this point, to be able to create some kind of, some more time, some passive income. And that's when real estate kept popping up. And that's when I got my start into real estate.
Wow. And so, I mean, you got a full family, you got a full-time job, and there's a lot of people listening to this that are in that same position right now. They have so much going on. They're not getting the time they want with their kids. They're not being able to set themselves up. Well, with all that going on, how did you find time for real estate?
Yeah. And so you just can't make excuses. You cannot make excuses. You have to want it. You have to want it really bad. Right. And so for me, because I was working all day long, pretty much, leaving the house at 6 o'clock, 6:30, and then getting home like at 7 o'clock or whatever. Right. So it was long hours for sure. But I found time during my lunch hour, right? During my breaks, and that's when you're instead of being on your phone and just chit chatting, you have to be on the phone, making calls. And that's the kind of things that I was doing, and reviewing this, learning more. Just there's always things you can be doing. Use your time wisely. And as I said, I really wanted to make it work and really wanted to make it happen. And so just kind of, those excuses, they come up, but you got to push them out the way, and that's kind of the way it was for me. And weekends as well, weekends, yeah, you can be doing something else and hanging out and just drinking or going out, whatever you want to do. Or you could be spending your time wisely and educating yourself and learning and listening to podcasts like the one that Jason, puts together. But those are the kind of things that I did, that's how it kind of pieced together, and so, yeah, it was just making it happen.
Yeah, you found time, and that's awesome. People say there's no time, but if you break down what you're actually doing in the day, there's always time, and you use that time to your best advantage. And so did you follow the steps your dad was doing, or what were those first steps into real estate? What did that look like?
Yeah. So yeah, I did get my start in single family, right? So single family, and that was because, I was just barely learning about multifamily, and, also because I just felt that multifamily was not for me. Why wasn't it for me at that time? Well, because it was psychological. It was like, well, these are owned by super duper wealthy people and big companies and all this and that. I didn't even know what the word syndication meant, I didn't even know that word existed. So I got my start with single family, right? So and I'll tell you the story real quick on that. I was vacant on one of my houses. I only had a couple of houses, but I was vacant on one of my houses, and then guess what happens when you're vacant? You're 100% vacant on a single family house because there's only one tenant living in your house, right? Or one paying tenant or whatever you want to say. And so I was vacant in that house, and then sure enough, after that, well, guess who's paying for the expenses, man? Who's paying for the mortgage? Who's paying for the utilities? It's this guy. And so that was my aha moment into like, hey, I really need to do this multifamily thing, because if I'm down one unit on a 10 unit, I'm still 90% occupied, and you scale bigger, you're one unit down on a 100 unit, you're still 99% occupied. And that was my thinking. I'm like, man, this already makes way more sense in a single family house, and so that's how I got my start into multifamily in the 32 unit.
It's funny. We have a similar story. We were investing for these smaller multifamilies out of state, like 2s and 3s. And, you just have one unit that's vacant. All of a sudden now you're 50% occupied. And you're just like, well, this has not covered it. Right. And so that was the dawn. I was like, well, what if you buy 100 unit? What does that look like? Well, then I got 99 and I got one vacancy. Okay. Well, that's a different picture. And what does it take to get those steps? So
yes.
You move from that and you jump into a 32 unit. Tell us the story. Like, how does this transpire that you find this property and take it down?
Yeah. So, when I first started learning about, multifamily, everybody kept saying, well, reach out to brokers. They're the ones that control the deals, reach out to brokers, build relationships with them. And I saw solid advice. But for me, I didn't necessarily know so much about, teamwork. Like in multifamily, a lot of it is a team sport, right? So for me, I was like, okay, well, how can I go to one of these brokers and have them send me deals, right? So, that's what I did. I met up with them, try to build those relationships. But still, they would send me deals that even then I knew that, these aren't really deals, man. These are deals that you're finding on LoopNet, this thing called LoopNet, and, that's where, deals don't really, if you find opportunities there on LoopNet, they're not really deals per se. Most of the time they're not going to be solid deals. Sometimes it will, but not all the time. And so, I wasn't finding luck, and so I was like, you know what, forget about this, man. What can I do? I was in a single family space, I was writing letters, I was doing all that good stuff. So I was like, what if I do this in the multifamily side, and I write letters and I send them out to the owners and all that good stuff, right? And let's see what happens there. And that's how I acquired my 32 unit, was through direct mail. So and the way I set up my list was, I went to the county assessor's website, right? And I put together some zip codes that I wanted to buy properties in, right? Specific zip codes. And within those zip codes, there was properties that I was looking for that were no older, that were owned for 3 years or longer. And the reason for that is because I felt that, hey, in 3 years, the ownership group or the owner has already owned it long enough. They've already done some things to it, maybe increase the value. Maybe they're ready for a sale, right? Or maybe it didn't work out for them and they're ready for a sale. So I was kind of waiting for like maybe 3 years plus is kind of what my time frame was. And then obviously there's physical characteristics that you look for, and they try to also have like as a filter was 1970 and above, and those kind of things, just to try to prevent like maybe tillers and all the good things. But anyway, long story short, that's how I was able to put my list together and have an owner call me back, and and they were ready for a sale.
Oh, that's awesome. So we haven't touched a lot on actually direct mail to multifamily. So is this like a traditional letter you were sending out to like a single family home, or was it a more professional letter? And give us some of the verbiage, and how many letters did you send out to start getting the desired response?
Yeah. So for me, I would say that I was kind of lucky. And so, I was sending out a bunch of them, and I can't tell you the exact number, but I know it was hundreds of them because, I don't remember the exact number. I know it was hundreds of them. And, I was handwriting these letters.
Oh, wow.
So at first what I did was I printed something out and I sent those in. But, I didn't really get any response. But once I started to handwrite these letters, and it was me actually handwriting these letters. Then I started getting some phone calls and some emails and those kind of things, because I had in my call to action, I had my phone number and I had my email. Just pretty much said, hey, if you're interested in selling, here you can reach me out here. But yeah, they're all handwritten, and I guess the language in the letters was, hey, I'm an active real estate investor. I am looking to expand into this submarket. We are able to close on a multifamily property. What I try to do was find out what their pain points could be, and make sure that I address those. And some of those pain points was, the closing costs. Was in my language, I put on there that I would take care of a lot of the closing costs. That I would also put down some hard money if needed. So those are the kind of things, because they don't know who you are, so they want to make sure that you can close as well. And I'll also put on there that I would pay market value for these properties. That's the kind of things the key words that I put in there.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And so you get this 32 unit, the owner of this 32 unit, to give you a call. And what was the negotiation process, and how did you know how to underwrite the property?
Yeah. So, as far as underwriting, then I was just using a regular cookie cutter type of spreadsheet. And so I was like, okay, for me, it makes sense if I take all my income, all my rents and other income or sources or whatever, and then I have, take away all my expenses, what is left over, and can I cover my mortgage? So I would say, hey, if I'm buying at this price, I'm looking at a mortgage calculator, amortization calculator. And that's pretty much the way I did it. It was pretty much very simple cookie cutter. And then there was still some meat left at the bottom. I'm like, man, this thing makes sense, And so, that's the way I did it. Right. So, as far as the owner and negotiations, that was another learning process there. So what I did there was, I made sure that I met with them in person, because it was more local. Right. So I met with them in person. I built that rapport. So whenever I met with the seller, it was a husband and wife. And so because I knew that there was a husband and wife involved, I made sure to bring my wife along the way as well. So I didn't just go by myself and say, hey, this is just some random dude that's trying to just low ball offers or whatever. I brought my wife, and what that did actually was that built even more rapport, because my wife is a nurse, and then the seller's daughter was a nurse, and so they live in the same area that we live. That we came to find out, and there was a lot of similarities, a lot of rapport, and that's how they felt comfortable, and they knew that I hadn't done a deal before in multifamily, but they were willing to give us a chance because they felt some rapport, they felt some connection, and they felt the hunger and the drive that we had, and so they wanted to give us a chance.
This story keeps getting better and better. So here you are, you're taking consistent, persistent action, right? You're sending a letter out that's typed and it doesn't work. So you could have just stopped there. Then you start saying, okay, I'll send out handwritten letters. Okay, great. And then you get the call across, and you have all these parts here, from underwriting to negotiating, that you had to learn and curve to the point, that you have to learn, that you could have just said, it's just too much. I don't understand. I don't know the answer, so I'm just going to stop. But the moral of the story here is you just said, I'm just going to figure it out. And bringing your wife, I mean, that's just beyond smart, but also just great in the point of building relationships, right? And now you become more presentable, and you're not just a guy who's trying to be a shark and get a deal. You're out there trying to learn to them, saying, and you're not boasting like I have 1 million properties when you don't. You're just being honest with them. This is our first deal. We love the area. We have similar backgrounds. We want to make this happen. So you take the property down. And what was the repositioning play, or what did you do with the property?
Yeah. So as far as the property itself, I mean, we rehabbed majority of the units, or a big portion of the units. We did exterior renovations, and just cleaned the place up, right? So it was in need of, there's a lot of deferred maintenance, and so it was a need of, clean up and a fresh look. And so we went in there and, landscaping, painting, roof, repairs, office. It had it was on site, but it was like a storage building that was being used as an office. Went in there, and fixed that up, and interior units and all that good things. And that's how we were able to add value to the property. But naturally, organically, we were able also to raise the rents, because the owner hadn't raised the rents in forever. So we were able to go in there and raise the rents organically, even before they upgrade. So it was a good play, good solid play there. And yeah.
And how'd you finance it and fund it? I jumped the gun here because people are probably listening. Well, it's his first deal. It's a 32 unit. He's going from single families to here, and all of a sudden he buys a 32 unit building. Well, how does this happen?
Yeah. That's a very good question. So, and that's another story in itself, actually. Once I talked to the owners, I was like, hey, they believed in me. They wanted to give me a shot. So I was like, okay, we're gonna make this happen. And so what I started doing right then and there was calling, different lenders, and they're like, oh, well, this is a purchase price of $1 million. That's what the purchase price was. It was $1 million. The loan amount was going to be about $800,000. I'm sorry. And so, Fannie and Freddie, they tried to stay above $1 million loan amount, right? So it wasn't gonna be something that they were willing to do. And then a lot of the banks that I went to, that I was calling, they were like, hey, yeah, you don't have any experience, so we really don't want to, or we can't do this. So I was getting a bunch of no's all over the place. But I think I talked to like 11 or 12 different lenders. And on the last one, I was actually on my way home. So I live in Houston. I was on my way home, and I was like, man, what about this bank? Let me just stop by and just see what these guys are about. And, I exited because my exit was coming up. I was, just exited real quick. And then I went in there and I said, hey, can I speak to someone that's in the commercial lending department? And they're like, yeah, he's right here. His name is Greg. Okay, cool. I went in there, hey, Greg, how's it going? And I told him, what I was doing, what I was looking for. He was like, sure, tell me more about that. And so what I had everything in order. So this is something that, maybe people can pick up as well, is if you're going to talk to a lender that you haven't done business with before, make sure you have everything in order. So for me, I had all my financials, I had information about the property itself, pictures. I had, my financials. I had my business plan, what I was willing to do. I had, pretty much everything that I could think of to help him make a more educated, decision on his part, And then he's like, man, how many banks have you been to? I'm like, man, at least, 11 or so, maybe 12. Wow. He's like, okay, well, let me go out there tomorrow. I'll go drive out there, and then I'll get back with you, and I'll let you know tomorrow. No later than tomorrow. I was like, okay, cool. That's better than a no. At that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then he goes out there the next day and he checks it out, and he's like, man, let's do this. I like the deal. I appreciate everything that you brought to me. You look prepared. You look like you're ready. Let's make this happen. I'm gonna help you. And so that's how I actually got it. It was actual local bank loan. That's how.
And you only need one yes, right? And we're so afraid to get the no. And when we hear that first no, it hurts, and we don't want to get another no. But you only need one yes, and you just kept going. I mean, you just could have just kept driving. Okay, I got 100 no's. I guess I can't. I'm just gonna go home. And I've been there, right? But it only takes that one yes. So that's awesome. And so you get into this deal, you rehab it, and how long did you hold it for? Because eventually you sold the property, correct?
Yeah. So we held it for a little under a couple of years.
Wow.
And so it was short. For us, so I did bring in a partner, and he's a real good friend of mine. He's actually invested in several of my other deals and syndications that I've done, since then. We partner on that deal, and he's an actual general contractor on the single family things, right? So he does a lot of work in the commercial space now these days. But we pretty much talked about it, and he's like, "Yeah, man, I wanna go in with you guys," and like that, it helps to reduce our risk, and then he's able to make some money in return as well. So we were able to knock it down together. That's how we were able to do it. We ended up holding it for I want to say like 19, 20 months, something like that. The returns were pretty strong. It was a good first deal. Looking back, it was a sale, but it was also a good opportunity to do a refi.
Mm-hmm.
And so we looked at both options. Sometimes I kind of regret, not doing a refi because it was such a good little property. But at the same time, I'm doing bigger deals now, and so it's okay, and then it did take some time, so there's time that goes involved into those kind of deals, or smaller deals, that a lot of people don't really think about from the very beginning. It's a lot more time intensive, and so I'm able to save a lot of that time, get it back.
Yeah, dude, home run deal. I mean, you started your whole career from it with the multifamily. You get into it, you have a whole play out, and you even show an exit now that you can show to people that you've gone through a cycle with the property. And just for people, I mean, we can go down a list of other properties involved with here, but just to even jump forward to today, they recently acquired a 236 unit last week, I believe, and I'm out of state. So how has the philosophy changed? Because you've had a number of different properties that you've now been involved in going for. So how did that 32 unit help as a stepping stone or a stepping stool to get you forward, to leap forward through all these other properties now to something as large as a 236 unit?
Yeah, no, I think it really did help a lot, and I would say, it's not 100% necessary for anybody listening. I mean, do I have to have a smaller deal before I get into a larger deal? Not necessarily, not necessarily. Does it help? Yeah, it definitely does help, because I mean, it's not going to hurt you. I mean, even if you do happen to make mistakes on that property, that actually ultimately helps you, because you're able to learn from those mistakes. I think for me, it was, I started with that 32 unit, because, through direct mail, but it also was good because I was able to learn a lot from it, from an operation standpoint, being responsible, treating the tenants like real people, not just like, people that just pay you or whatever, create a community, those kind of things, so I see it from that standpoint, you want to make it a better community, right? So better community is going to be better for the people. It's going to be better for investors, better for business overall, and those are some of the biggest things that I learned, and just not be afraid of taking action, so 32 unit, I mean, there's work involved. There's a 236 unit, there's work involved, and you can argue that, there's a lot of, maybe, almost as equal in a 32 unit versus a 236 unit. But a lot of it is similarities, so it just, don't be afraid to take action, and regardless of the size, obviously be have common sense. If you can't take down a 5,000 unit property, don't go after that. But like, something that's reasonable, right? So that's what I would say.
Yeah, it's all mental, right? I mean, you have issues and just conflicts and things you have to grow with, whether you're doing a 50 unit, a 100 unit or a 500 unit. But as the economies of scale grow, I mean, so if you feel comfortable, you can only do a 5 unit, that's great. But look at the numbers, at least give yourself the chance to understand why, that if you can just get your mind past that speed bump of a 5 unit, get to a 50 unit, get to a 100 unit, why it starts opening up a lot more doors for you. So, congrats. That's just awesome. And just one other question about this is, so you're local in Texas, and you have a lot of properties that you've invested in Texas, but you've started to move out of state, which is almost contrary to so many people that want to get into Texas. So talk to me about that. Why are you doing that? And this recent property was in Phoenix.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. Yeah, so I love Texas. Texas, born and raised. Right outside of Houston. This is home for me. And so that being said, we have been very fortunate. In Texas, we've had a lot of job growth. And what happens with job growth? It creates population growth, and what happens with population growth? It creates demand for housing. So it's just one thing leads to another, right? So we have been actively looking for properties here in Houston, DFW, even San Antonio. But just, it's highly competitive, because, if a lot of people out there like it, we like it too, right? But it's very competitive as well. And so one of the markets that we were looking at, like on the side, was Phoenix, Arizona, because it has a lot of the same similarities. It's got job growth, population growth, rent growth, you name it. It's got a lot of it right now. And last year, if I'm not mistaken, it was right there neck and neck with Las Vegas for the highest rent growth year over year. So it's just one of those crazy markets right now, and it's doing really well. And what's crazy about it as well is that they don't have an oversupply. So that's why they're having those huge rent bumps as well. But it was a market that I was looking at from the corner of my eye, and just kept occasionally looking at deals, and then. We weren't finding anything here in Texas, so then I started more aggressively looking there, and that's how we were able to land the next deal, which was in Phoenix, Arizona. Which actually tomorrow I'll be flying out, to check it out and meet with the owner. I mean the management team and all that good stuff. And
that's incredible.
So yeah, just you got to look at those economic drivers that really make it a more, I wouldn't say 100% safe, but it makes it a more you're not necessarily going off of speculation. You're going off of numbers, real numbers,
Yeah, you're seeing the opportunity and you're really just grasping on the opportunity. So great work. And so, hey, we're going to jump over to the snap section question. You ready?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. So what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Best piece of advice that I have ever received is to take action. That is simply just to take action. And I would say that, you can learn as much as you can. You can sit there and read, and you have to be willing to pull that trigger, and that's what you got to do. Take action.
Yeah, you're a testament to that. What's a talent you wish you would possess?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know if it's, a talent that I wish to possess. I don't know. Is it something that's in real estate related or something outside?
It could be anything.
Yeah. I mean, I really haven't thought about this. So I would say, I want to learn to be a better swimmer. I've been practiced to do these triathlons, and,
awesome.
and I actually backed out of one because I'm not a good swimmer. So I can swim like a lap or two, and then I'm like breathing so hard. So, it's definitely swimming is a weakness of mine.
You are right there with me. So I do a lot of long distance running. I do a lot of biking. Swimming is by far my weakest. However, my wife is born and raised in Hawaii, so my kids are little fish. So they swim around. So one, I've been in the pool because every time I do a triathlon, I literally get crushed on the swim and then crushed on the bike and the run. So I'm right there with you. So that's a perfect response.
Awesome.
What's your real estate superpower?
Real estate superpower is connections. Building connections, connecting with people. I didn't realize it before. Maybe 3-4 years ago, that I'm actually decent with people. And I didn't realize it before because of my the circumstances I was in with the job, and the environment I was in. You're kind of more enclosed. And you don't get to kind of get free to be out there. And I realized that that's actually one of my strengths. And underwriting has become a strength of mine as well, over time as well. So,
what's a lesson learned throughout this process that you can share with the listeners?
A lesson learned throughout the process is that you can never stop learning, for sure. Going back to that 32 unit, for example, one mistake that I made on that, specific mistake that I made on that was I didn't account for CapEx, and so, a lot of the repairs and CapEx that we did was coming out of cash flow. That was a big no-no. So do not do that. Make sure you account for that CapEx up front. like that
Awesome.
you can retain that cash flow. So that's a big lesson learned for me on that 32 unit.
Yeah, it's great. And you got it done. You moved it forward. It was a great project. So good for you. And what's a focus or productivity hack that you could share?
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as productivity, I mean, I always use a calendar, if that's, your question that the kind of answer you're referring to.
Sure.
We always use calendars and we have schedules every single time, so there's like blocks, and you've heard it many times before, like people saying it, but it really does help me. Because if not, then I kind of tend to drift off a little bit, and I'm like, oh man, I need to get back on track, So use a calendar and be strict with it, and attack your some of your toughest, tasks, earlier, and get it out the way. Like that, you'll feel much more accomplished throughout the day.
Yeah, you're right. We do the same thing. And, you hear it a lot, but the second you put into action, you say, I don't want to live by a calendar. But the second you live by a calendar, you actually get your freedom back because you're not all over the place with these random tasks. So what's your greatest tidbit for success?
Greatest tidbit for success, I would say, it's kind of going back to taking action, but also, make sure that, don't be afraid, just really, it really isn't that difficult, I would say, and I think a lot of people, they tend to make it a little bit more difficult than it has to be, get educated, don't be afraid to take action.
Awesome.
And just go for it, and you really have to want it, and that's kind of going back to my very first point is, you have to want it more than you're afraid to. You have to be more afraid to fail than anything else. That's the way it's got to be.
Juan, this has been an awesome show. So thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate your time. Just a ton of actionable steps here. Really just with the premise is that take action and you're going to face no's, but you just have to fight through the no's because you're ultimately going to get to that yes if you want the why bad enough. So Juan, for everybody listening, what's the best way to reach out to learn more about you?
Yeah. Thank you. So people can reach out to me, through my email. That's Juan@GenWealthCapital.com. Juan@GenWealthCapital.com. I'm all over social media as well. And, you can send me a friend request as well, or connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram or whichever media platform you're on.
Oh, this is awesome.
Happy to help out with, and talk to other people as well.
Cool. Well, Juan, thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate it. It was fun. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And for everyone listening, thank you for checking us out. Of course, if you like what you hear, go give us a ratings and review. It doesn't have to be 5 stars. We just want to hear from you. Tell us what you like. Tell us what we could do better. We want to make the show the best for you because you just got this killer show today, and we want to bring you more like this. Have a great day.